The engine was dead when she arrived, but it was Ngozi who should have been afraid. Eme heard the black Prado before he saw it. The dry knock of a seized time belt, the kind of damage that came from neglect, from someone who had too much money to notice warning signs. He was under a Camry when the car rolled through his gate, pushed by two boys from the road. He slid out, stood up, wiped his hands. Then he saw her step out of the passenger side and his whole body went still. She was wearing white lace. Her hair was pinned up. She looked like the kind of woman Lagos respected, polished, unhurried, untouchable. She was scanning the workshop with mild irritation, the way rich people scanned places that were beneath them, when her eyes found his face. She froze. Neither of them spoke for a full 5 seconds. Around them, the workshop kept moving, metal clanging, radio playing, one of his boys laughing at something. But in the space between Eme and this woman in white lace, everything was suspended. If this story is already pulling at you, you are not alone. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because where this goes next, you do not want to miss a single second. Your car, Eme said. Yes, she cleared her throat. The mechanic on Adeniyi said you are the best. Leave the key with my boy. I will look at it tomorrow. I need it today. Everyone needs it today. He turned back toward the Camry. Emeka. He stopped. His back was still to her. Nobody called him Emeka in that particular way. 2 syllables carrying 25 years of something he had buried so deep, he sometimes forgot it had a name. He turned around slowly. You should come back tomorrow, he said, for the car. But she did not come back tomorrow. She came back that same evening, just before closing, when the last apprentice had left and the compound was quiet. Eme was locking the supply room when he heard the gate creak. He did not turn around immediately. He already knew. Why are you here? He said. Because I had nowhere else to go. Her voice cracked on the last word. He hated that it still did something to him, that crack, that smallness in her voice. He was 31 years old and he still hated it. He turned. She was standing just inside the gate, her lace now dusty at the hem, her pins half loose, and she looked smaller, like the woman who lived inside the Lagos wealth had been slowly emptied out. Rotimi left me, she said. I know. She looked up sharply. You know? Lagos is a small place when you know how to listen. He crossed his arms. What do you want, Ngozi? She flinched at the name. No mama, no softness. Just her name, flat and final. I want... She stopped, started again. I made a mistake. You made a choice, he said. There's a difference. Her eyes filled. You are 10 years old. You were my son. I was 10 years old at Jibowu Motor Park, sitting on a bench, waiting for you to come back with something. I waited 3 hours. 3 hours, Ngozi. And then a bus conductor felt sorry for me and gave me half of his bread. A tear broke loose from her eye. She pressed her mouth to her mouth. I'm not telling you that to hurt you, he continued, his voice flat and quiet. I'm telling you because you said you made a mistake, and I want you to understand the full size of it. She had been beautiful once in a way that made people move out of her path. Eme remembered this without warmth. He remembered standing beside her at the market when he was maybe 7, watching men stumble over their words when she smiled. He had been proud of her then. That's my mama, he used to think. She is the most beautiful person in the world. He remembered the morning she dressed him in his 2 good shirts, both of them, one on top of the other, because she said the Hamatan was coming. She had bought him fried plantain on the woman outside their compound. She had held his hand on the bus to Jibowu. She had been so warm that morning, so present. He had no idea it was because she was saying goodbye. Stay here, she had said, standing him in front of the bench like she was positioning a piece of furniture. I'm going to get you something. Don't move. He had not moved. He had sat with his 2 shirts and his empty plantain wrap, and he had watched the crowd. Downfall buses roaring in and out, hawkers moving between cars. A woman selling groundnuts stopped to look at him around the 2nd hour and said, Omo, you dey wait for who? He said, my mama. She nodded and moved on. By the 3rd hour, something had shifted in his chest. Not panic, something quieter and more permanent. An understanding. She was not coming back. He had sat with that understanding for a long time before he stood up. And when he stood up, he was different. Something in him had closed like a door, smooth and final, and he had walked into the rest of his life through that closed door. "Did you ever think about me?" he asked. They were now seated, him on an old drum, her on the wooden bench outside the supply room, because he had not invited her inside. "Every day," she whispered. "And what did you tell yourself?" She did not answer immediately. The night insects were loud. Somewhere outside the compound, a generator kicked on. She finally said, "I told myself you would be fine, that children are resilient, that was convenient for you." Yes, she didn't defend it. It was. He looked at her for a long moment. "Rotimi knew about me the whole time?" "He found out 3 years ago. Someone from Onitsha recognized me at an event and mentioned I had a son. He hired someone to dig." She exhaled slowly. "He said if I had lied about that, I could lie about anything. He wasn't wrong." She looked up at him, and for a second he saw it. Not the Lagos wife, not the woman in white lace, just a tired woman sitting in a mechanic compound in the dark, carrying something she could not put down. He did not soften, but he did not look away either. He had not cried when Mama Keke died. He had stood at her graveside in the rain with his one good shirt soaked through and his jaw set, and he had not cried because she had told him not to. "When I go," she had said, 3 weeks before the end, her voice already thinning, "you will not fall apart, you hear me? You will bury me properly and you will go back to work. That is how you honor me." So he had buried her properly. He had paid for every part of it himself, the casket, the grave, the small gathering of market women who knew her. And after everyone left, he had stood there alone in the wet Mushin cemetery and said quietly to the mud, "I will not be defeated, not by this life, not by anyone." Then he had gone back to work. That was the thing Ngozi would never understand, that someone had already mothered him, imperfectly, loudly, with a sharp tongue and bad knees, and a room that sometimes they bumped into each other reaching for things, but completely. Mama Keke had mothered him completely, and that completeness had become the foundation everything else was built on. "There was a woman," he said now, in the dark of the compound. "She found me at the motor park 2 years after you left. I was stealing fruit from her bag." Ngozi's breath caught. He continued, "She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, 'You have a serious face for a small boy. Come and eat first.'" He paused. "I stayed for 11 years. "What was her name?" "Mama Kiki," he nodded, toward the workshop gate where the sign was just visible in the yellow security light. "Mama Kike Autos." Ngozi pressed both hands over her mouth. Her shoulders shook once. He watched her cry without moving toward her. "She never asked me where I came from," he said. "She never made me explain myself. She just decided I was hers, just like that." His voice did not break, but it slowed. "Do you know how rare that is? To have someone just decide you are worth keeping, no conditions, no clean slate required." The words landed where they meant them to land. Ngozi flinched, like she had been struck. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Emeka, I am so sorry." "I know you are," he said. "I believe you." He leaned forward, elbows on knees, looking at the ground between his boots. "But sorry is for you. It makes you feel better. It doesn't change the bench at Jibowu. It doesn't give me back the years I pushed wheelbarrows in the rain so I could stay in school. It doesn't sit with Mama Kike in her last weeks so she didn't die alone." He looked up. "I did all of that, me, and I did it without you." She was quiet for a long time. The generator outside hummed on. A dog barked somewhere down the street and then stopped. "Is there anything," she said carefully, "anything at all that you need from me? Anything I can do?" He almost smiled, not cruelly, more like a man who had heard a question he had already answered a long time ago. "I needed you at 10, he said. "I needed you at 12 when I was hawking water in traffic and my feet were cracked from the sun. I needed you at 16 when I sat outside the school after closing because I had nowhere to go and I didn't want Mama Kike to see how tired I was." He shook his head. I don't need you now, Ngozi. I have everything I need. I built it. She nodded slowly. A tear ran down the side of her jaw and dropped onto her lace. She didn't wipe it. But I want you to know one thing, he said, and his voice shifted, softer, not warmer, but honest in a way that cost him something. I don't hate you. I used to. When I was young and I didn't understand yet, I hated you so much it kept me warm at night. A short exhale. But hate is heavy, and I have too much to carry already. She looked at him then, really looked, the way she perhaps had not looked since he was a small boy standing next to her at the market, proud and unaware. You look like your father, she said quietly. I know. He was a good man. I know that too. She stood slowly, gathering herself, smoothing the dusty hem of her lace with hands that were no longer the hands of a Lagos Oga wife, just a woman's hands, older than she wanted them to be. She picked up her bag. She looked at the workshop sign one more time. She did a better job than I would have, Ngozi said softly, not fishing for contradiction, just saying it plainly the way people sometimes say true things when they have nothing left to protect. Yes, Emeka said. She did. Ngozi walked toward the gate. She stopped once, her back to him, and said, I'm glad you survived. I'm glad too. And then she walked out, and the gate creaked shut behind her, and Emeka Chukwuemeka stood alone in his compound, in the workshop he had named after the woman who chose him, and he breathed in the smell of oil and iron and his own earned life, and it was enough. It had always been enough. He picked up his rag. He went back to work. The boy she left at the gate became the man who needed no one to open it for him. If this story moved you, subscribe, like this video, and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching this from? Let us know below. We read every single one.